Okay, sweet. We're recording, guys. So happy Monday. Thanks for being here. We're going to talk really briefly about grades, and kind of what the situation is. Some of you know that teachers aren't really supposed to be assigning work that can lower your grade right now, and so I want to honor that. So we'll start talking about that. We'll finish talking about chapter 4, and then we'll do chapter 5, kind of leading you up to the American Revolution, a lot of the boycott, protest, and acts of parliament that we talked about leading up to the Declaration of Independence. So let's start off with grades. If anything is confusing, guys, just speak up and let me know. But I don't know if I fully agree with this, but we've been instructed by the administration to not do any work that lowers people's grade. And I definitely understand where they're coming from. It's hectic, it's chaotic. So I get that. But what that means, guys, is there's no point in me assigning quizzes and grading them. There's totally a point in me assigning the quizzes for practice so you can get extra practice, but there's 0 point in me grading it whatsoever. So that's why you'll notice that I didn't actually end up grading your chapter 25 quiz, because they've instructed me that, Mahoney, you can't lower anyone's grade during this time period. So also, that doesn't go just for my class, folks. You need to be aware that that's kind of what all your teachers have been instructed to. Again, I don't know if I fully agree with that, but that's the directive. So if anyone's been assigning work that's been having a detrimental impact on your grade, ask the teacher what's up with that, because they're not supposed to be doing it. I think it's really good that we're going to keep practicing test questions, but I'm literally not allowed to lower anyone's grade for them. So with that said, I'm not going to score them. I'll definitely put a couple more practice quizzes up and practice test questions up and stuff like that, but it's going to be totally optional. You won't even get a participation grade for it. It's just there for you if you want to do it, because at this point, like I said, we're just practicing for our AP test. So guys, your grade can go up in my class from now, but it can't go down. What you need to be doing is completing your review packets for completion. And if you're missing any quizzes, in every class, I've got like 2 or 3 people that are missing some quizzes, basically from chapter 19 on. So email me if you've taken them. They're on AP Classroom. I have not gone back in, guys, and made all the makeups from earlier, just because I don't know if I want to do that. I'm not sure if I want to just throw those random multiple choices up. So if you are really wanting to see your grade go up, you need to email me and we'll have a one-on-one conference on it. If you're right now sitting at like a B- and you're like, oh my gosh, I need to get to an A-, you're going to have to talk to me one-on-one. We're going to have to figure out how to do that, but I'm not going to just throw those quizzes out there. You can meet with me one-on-one and we'll talk about that. So anyhow, not saying it can't happen, but yeah, that's where we're at. Any questions on grades or anything like that so far, folks? Speak up if you have any questions or comments. If that doesn't make sense, again, everything now is just for completion. We're just doing the review packets now for completion. Sweet. I'll wait maybe 15 seconds in case anyone has a question, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the review, and we'll do a little screen sharing and talk a little bit about it. Looks like everyone's on the same page. And also, guys, if you heard me mention earlier, I wanted to do a final. I don't know what that means for us. I don't know if I'm going to be allowed to give a final and grade it. I'm definitely going to give one for practice, but I don't think that I'll be. I don't know if any teacher is going to be allowed to give a final that's graded. So just be aware of that, and I'll keep you informed as soon as I hear anything. But it's not my goal to hurt anyone's grade here. It's just my goal to get you guys to pass that test. That's all I care about right now. So, all right, let's do a little screen share. If you have your chapter 4 and chapter 5 learning targets, I recommend you pull them out. I'll screen share with you guys because I've got mine ready to go. I'm presenting to everyone. Give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Sweet. All right, guys, so when we last met, we talked about the First Great Awakening. We talked about the contribution that we'll have towards the freedom of religion in this country and how we'll refuse to ever adopt a state-sponsored religion. We talked about the middle colonies. We talked about them being ethnically and religiously diverse. This is where William Penn is recruiting Germans to settle. These are the guys growing cereal crops. This is typically where you're going to settle if you don't fit into Puritan New England. And again, know the difference between cereal crops and cash crops. Cereal crops, grain, wheat, oats, barley. Cash crops, tobacco, rice. It's the difference between what they're doing in the middle colonies and northern colonies and what they're doing in the southern Chesapeake colonies. We talked about the Enlightenment already, folks. We talked about how ideas about separation of powers, how about overthrowing governments that don't protect your natural rights, about how humans have natural God-given rights. All of those ideas of the European Enlightenment are going to have major impacts on our American founding fathers when they're crafting their political ideas. Remember, European Enlightenment is a political phenomenon that will have huge influences on the American Revolution. The language of the Enlightenment will find its way into our founding documents. Remember Thomas Paine's Common Sense? He summarizes Enlightenment ideas. We did not really talk about the Regulators, and so I'll spend maybe 5 minutes or something about the Regulators, and then we'll also talk about Pontiac's Rebellion, which is really easy. Now, remember, guys, the Regulators are going to be in the Carolina region, and this is, again, very, very similar to what we're going to see in Shays' Rebellion and also similar to Bacon's Rebellion, even though they all happen in different time periods, and they certainly have certain unique characteristics. But the Regulators, guys, again, that's an episode of class conflict. You can read about that in the Howard's End chapter, Tyranny is Tyranny, but the Regulators are, again, in North and South Carolina, and they are movements of lower class farmers against unfair taxation and against unfair, essentially, lack of court systems in the rural parts of the province or rural parts of the colony there. The Regulators are going to arm themselves. They're going to hold up court proceedings. They're going to free people from debtors' prisons. Because again, guys, many of the, since the taxes are really unfair, a lot of poor farmers who are failing to pay their taxes are getting like their land seized. So it's kind of the lower class farmers, and again, they call themselves the Regulators. They really feel like this is a scheme against them. The elites have written the laws to make the taxes oppressive. And when I can't pay your oppressive taxes, you seize my farm. You're going to see a huge movement of men. There'll be thousands of men who participate in this. And again, they're going to be holding up courthouses. I mean, the judge can't seize your land if he can't even get in the door. They're going to be, not like violently overthrowing jailers, but if 500 armed men show up to the jailhouse and there's 2 guards, the guards aren't going to shoot it out with them. The Regulators are going to free debtors from prison as well. Be aware that the Regulator movement, guys, it's not nearly as violent as Bacon's Rebellion. As Powell helped us understand last time we talked, Bacon's Rebellion is super gnarly. They burned Jamestown to the ground. There is going to be a few episodes of violence in the Regulator movement, but it's not going to be anything close to what you see in Bacon's Rebellion as we looked it up. When you see Regulator movement, you need to think about class conflict in colonial America. This is the 1760s, folks. So again, Bacon's Rebellion, that was like 1680s or maybe 1670s. This is almost 80 or 90 years later. This is the 1760s. So, a good 10 years, 15 years before the American Revolution. That's the Regulator movement. Is it more detailed than that? Of course it is. There are so many more details on the Regulators, but you don't have to remember them for this class. You just simply have to know, guys, that this is an episode of class conflict. It has to do with this idea of unfair taxation system where poor people out in the rural counties oftentimes don't get to vote. Remember, folks, we talk about the House of Burgesses and we talk about the Puritan town meeting. Yeah, they're kind of democratic, guys, but most adult males, obviously no women, but most adult males don't get to participate in those local governing associations and bodies. That's part of the reason why the Regulators are so uptight about it. If you look at the Wikipedia, I'm sure you'd find a few more details that are probably accurate and helpful, but we've got to simplify this. And the Regulators, guys, are going to represent, again, class conflict in the pre-American Revolutionary period right there. It's the haves versus the has-nots. And again, if that doesn't make sense, I would really recommend you reread the Howard's End chapter, Tyranny is Tyranny. That's all I want to say on that, because when we take the test, we've got to find a way to limit it. So that's what I'm going to say on the Regulators. Again, there's probably more info, but if you can remember that, I promise you're going to be fine. Look down at Pontiac's Rebellion real quick, folks. We know that one. That's in modern-day Michigan, in the region around the Great Lakes. And we have, once again, Indian attacks on the frontier. And that stuff's expensive, folks. It takes a lot of money to set up forts in the frontier. Think about how much supplies it takes to supply or to outfit British soldiers on the frontier. They need horses, they need clothing, they need a roof over their head, they need food, they need everything. It's expensive to man those frontier forts. And so for that reason, we are telling all of the settlers, and this is again after the French and Indian War, after 1763, we're telling the settlers, or I'm sorry, the colonists, you may not go west of the Appalachians. Why? Because it's way too expensive to settle out there. That's the proclamation line of 1763. That signifies the end of salutary neglect. Guys, that's the only thing you need to know about Pontiac's Rebellion. I'd be lying to you if I told you what it's all about. I can guarantee you it's probably about competition for land and resources, but I don't know anything about Pontiac. I honestly, folks, don't even know what tribe he belongs to, and I kind of feel ignorant, but remember, we're test prepping. When you see Pontiac's Rebellion, it's an example of native resistance. It is an example of salutary, I should say the resulting proclamation line will be an example of salutary neglect coming to an end. We're no longer going to let the colonists really govern themselves after the end of the French Indian War. And a good example that happens really early on is Pontiac's Rebellion. Are there more details for Pontiac's Rebellion? Of course there are, but I'm not going to lie to you and say that I know them. For this test, you got to immediately connect that to the proclamation line of 1763, and you got to immediately connect that to salutary neglect. Pontiac, Ottawa. Okay, that makes sense. Right up there. Ottawa tribe. I love it if you guys look stuff up while I'm talking about it and fill in, because I'm kind of freestyling. So I really love it when if Mahoney's talking about something, you Wikipedia it at the same time and can chime in. That's really cool. Thanks, Powell. So that's really all I wanted to say, guys, on that was chapter 4, learning targets. That was the end of it. Great Awakening, Enlightenment. This one right here, guys, is French Indian War. We don't do anything about the war. You just have to understand that the war represents the end of salutary neglect, because Great Britain is a huge amount of debt. Great Britain fought that war essentially to combat their rivals, the French, and they fought that war to assist British colonists in North America. Now they want British colonists to pay for that debt. And again, we know what that debt's going to lead to: taxes, acts, the end of salutary neglect. Hopefully you guys are seeing the connections between these things. Anyhow. Cool. Any questions for chapter 4 before we move on? We'll do about 15 more minutes today, folks, and we'll do chapter 5. But any burning questions in the meantime? Oh, where's my camera? There we go. Hi, everyone. No questions for 4? Okay, cool. I'll move on for 5 a little bit, guys, and then we'll go from there. Oh, we had a lot more people join us. That's good. All right, look at 5 real quick. Hopefully you have these out, folks. Look at the vocabulary real quick. You don't have to remember every single tax and every single act, but you probably need to know them in chronological. You need to know a few. You don't need to know them all, guys. I don't even know them all. There's a ton of them. I probably know like 7 or 8. And you don't have to be experts in them, but you kind of have to know what the colonial response is. Like if you think the Stamp Act is super late, that's not okay. You got to know the Stamp Act is really early on. And you got to understand how the colonists respond to these acts. Remember, folks, how do colonists respond to the end of salutary neglect? Sometimes they respond peacefully. Sometimes they respond violently. What's an example of peaceful response to the end of salutary neglect, or what's peaceful response to the Stamp Act? Remember, Stamp Act Congress. That's where essentially a meeting of colonial leaders where they send a petition to the king. It's a formal written document where they ask the king to stop it. That might sound silly to you, but guys, that's a new colonial identity building. That's what they want you to say on the AP test. Even though the Stamp Act Congress, it doesn't really result in, well, I take that back. The king will repeal the Stamp Act. So I will say the Stamp Act Congress is semi-effective at least. But it's not just the Stamp Act Congress, guys. It's also tons of boycotting. There's a lot of smuggling, and there is some violence. So I don't want you to think that just because the colonists asked, the king repealed the Stamp Act. It was kind of a counterintuitive law. But be aware that there are peaceful examples of protesting, boycotting, also political protest through the Stamp Act Congress. And also, guys, the Stamp Act Congress, like I said already once, it represents a new American identity forming. These colonies are starting to recognize that, hey, what Great Britain is doing to all of us collectively is not that fair. And we have a slightly different identity than they do over across the Atlantic Ocean over there. So again, it's not only an example of nonviolent response to the Stamp Act, it's an example of a new forming American identity. And that's really what they want to see on the AP test, guys. So we know Stamp Act. Guys, Sugar Act isn't that important. We know salutary neglect. That's when Great Britain keeps their hands off. They're neglecting us, guys. Why are they neglecting us? Because the triangular trade profits are flowing. As long as Great Britain is getting their profits from triangular trade, they're going to basically let us govern themselves. It's the debt from the war that ends that. So we know salutary neglect. We also know what the proclamation line is. John Dickinson, you'll see that source, folks. He's just basically proclaiming the needs of the colonists. He's talking about taxation without representation. It's just a really, really famous source that I've tested you on. It appeared on your Chapter 5 test, that letter. We know about virtual representation. We know about the Quartering Act, being forced to house British soldiers, being forced to feed them. That's one of the most offensive things I've ever heard of. That's a reason that's why it's in our American Bill of Rights, guys. Imagine that, having to quarter soldiers. Townsend Acts, closing of Boston Harbor, also known as the I'm sorry, that's not the Townsend Acts. That's a different tax. Townsend Acts are on like glass and beads. I was thinking down here of the coercive acts. Anyhow, we'll talk more about these in detail, folks. I'm going to not even finish this all today, but I just wanted to get you looking at the vocabulary to start reminding you about this stuff. So there you go. Let's down look at our learning targets. I can explain why.
Is this chapter 3 or 4?
This is 5.
Okay.
Yeah, we did 3 2-3 days ago. We just finished up 4, and now we're on 5.
Okay.
Yep. And again, if you missed any videos, folks, they're all posted on my YouTube channel. All the review ones we've done have been posted on there. So let's do the first learning target real quick, guys. We'll just go for about 10 or 11 more minutes today. I can explain why salutary neglect came to an end and what the consequences of that were. Guys, why does salutary neglect come to an end? Because Great Britain's is in a huge amount of debt, and they need to recoup that debt from the French and Indian War. Salutary neglect comes to an end because Great Britain is what kind of a country? A mercantilist country. Remember what mercantilism is all about. It's using government policies to control the economy in ways that maximize profits for the state. So again, Great Britain's a mercantilist economy, and once they get into debt, they are going to try to heavily control the activities of the colonists in terms of economics. So know why it came to an end. Know its connection to mercantilism, and know examples of it. Proclamation line's an example. Quartering Act's an example. All these taxes are examples. Cool. Down here, I can analyze ways in which patriots protested. Folks, remember the tarring and feathering? Hopefully you can still see my screen. You should watch this again. You should watch the John Adams on HBO. We won't watch the whole thing. I just wanted to remind you guys what it was. In fact, I don't think we'll watch any of it other than like 2 seconds. Can you see my screen still? How exciting. Look at this, guys. Watch it. You remember the tarring and feathering. I'm just trying to get you to think back to that John Adams clip. I really think you guys would be beneficial if you're sitting in quarantine. If you watch the John Adams, it's on Amazon, I believe. It's on HBO, and you can probably find it on Netflix as well. So it would be super helpful if you watch the John Adams clip. Ways we protested. Sons of Liberty. Remember, guys, Sons of Liberty and Daughters of Liberty. Sons of Liberty are going to typically use intimidation tactics. Those are your guys that are going to be tarring and feathering tax collectors. Those would be the ones that will be burning them in effigy. Remember what to burn someone in effigy means. It's like burn a straw man or burn like a doll that looks like them. The Sons of Liberty are going to be using intimidation tactics. Remember, folks, not all colonists subscribe to the patriot cause. When the American Revolution breaks out, a lot of historians think it's split pretty evenly. 33, 33, 33. Patriots, neutral, and loyalists. The Sons of Liberty, again, they will not always be violent. Sometimes they're going to be violent, but the Sons of Liberty will enforce boycotts. If you're a shopkeeper and you're supposed to be, not selling any British goods, they might pay you a visit and intimidate you a little bit, maybe even break a few things in your shop and encourage you to support the boycott. Sons of Liberty, again, know what their goal is. They use peaceful and they use peaceful and violent means of protesting. Know who the Daughters of Liberty are. Remember, those are our females, and they will possibly ask you guys about the changing role of a woman throughout American history. It's really easy to talk about the Daughters of Liberty being involved in the boycotts and the homespun movement. Remember, guys, women oftentimes control what comes into the home. These women in the 1770s in the British colonies control what comes into the home in terms of food products. They're very instrumental at making sure that their families participate in the boycott. And also, guys, remember, you've got to buy the British textiles. You've got to buy British goods. And so if I am spinning my own clothing or creating my own clothing, it's an overt act of defiance. It's what Gandhi did when his people made salt. I don't know if you guys remember much about Gandhi from world history, but his march to the sea to collect salt, or his homespun movement, it's very, very similar, a peaceful act of civil disobedience. And then also there will be some violent responses, guys, specifically from the militia later on. I'm not trying to really analyze the impacts of Bunker Hill and Lexington really quickly, but understand that the colonists will end up defending themselves with arms when they feel it necessary. Examples of that can be seen in Lexington and Concord. Know a couple peaceful ways of protest. Know a couple violent ways of protest. Know ways that the ladies got involved. There's our first two, I would say. What are the different taxes and acts? Guys, again, you don't have to know them all, but if I were you, I would know Stamp Act. I would know Quartering Act, Townsend Act. I would know Tea Act. I would know Coercive Acts. Cool. I think I am going to probably stop right there and keep it short. And I want to finish this chapter tomorrow, chapter 5, because I want to talk more about the Tea Party. I want to talk more about, the closing of Boston Harbor. I want to talk a little bit more about the Continental Congress and the actual decision to break away. So I wanted to keep it purposely short today, guys. So that's where I think we'll stop today. I'm going to leave the stream open for a little bit and take any questions, or maybe we can just chat and hang out for a little bit. But that's where I want to leave the content today. If you look at Google Classroom, I've already posted, oh man, where is it? I've already posted the review packet. I heard some feedback from Skylar who thought the review packet was kind of helpful. Did you guys, did anyone else? I really do want your feedback. Did anyone else find the review packet helpful at all?
Yeah, I thought it was helpful because it like brought back a lot of things that I didn't remember from the beginning of the year.
Cool.
Yeah, I thought it was helpful too, especially how it linked the videos. Like if we needed further instruction, that was really good too.
Good. And I like them also because they don't go that deep, frankly. It's not like super depth of knowledge. It's just kind of the basics. And so I think they're really good. Okay, good. So that's good feedback. So we'll keep going with them. On Google Classroom, guys, I've already posted the assignment for this week. Sorry, folks, my computer died.
That's so funny.
Good job. Good job.
It like 20 minutes ago, it's like,
Dead.
and you have an hour of battery. And apparently using the Google Hangout and everything takes a lot of battery. So sorry about that. Fortunately, I was basically done with the I was basically done, guys. I appreciate you hanging on there. I just wanted to show you where I'd put the review guide and everything. So sorry for that snafu. I'll show you real quick. We know that they're semi-helpful, and here we go. Wait. Oh my goodness. So just like last time, guys, just download it. Same exact process as last time. In fact, I don't even need to show you that. I don't know what I'm doing. Stop sharing. Okay. So we'll do this again tomorrow, folks. Does anyone have a time preference? What's your schedule? Is Layman or Mr. Dick doing anything at a specific time tomorrow?
Layman's doing something tomorrow, I think. Let me check.
I think
it's at 11.
AP Lang is at 9 and math is at 11.
So you have AP Lang at 9, Grace, and math at 11. Is Layman just doing one stream tomorrow?
No, she does one for each of her classes. I can
She
see.
follows the
does.
schedule for each.
Yeah, she has
period.
one at 9 and she has one at 11.
Gotcha. Are a
Yeah,
lot of your
mine's at
teachers?
11.
Okay.
Mine is at 9 too for her. So I've heard.
And I'm just going to say we're going to do it at 10 o'clock again.
Yay.
Because that's for one of my classes. I don't even know. What class period is 10 o'clock tomorrow?
That's your class. That's our third period.
It's third period? Okay. So tomorrow we will do 10 o'clock.
And anyone that wants to can join, and anyone who can't can just check us out on the YouTube channel. How are you guys?
Tired.
Feeling a little scared.
Tired.
Oh, Frank.
Oh,
Baby.
He's really sad.
Mm.
so cute.
Okay, well, I'm going to stop recording. No need to record that. I wonder what the video is going to look like with my video or with my computer dying in the